If one were to venture too deep into the caverns of the old world, the flip of a coin they might stumble upon all manner of hellish creature, from dragon to ratmen, or just come across various species of fluorescent fungi. Depending on the variant, mushrooms could be the least of their worries, or the worst of them. It is the age of the squig, a host of creatures whose bulbous bouncing forms may even appear adorable at a distance in their own way, but proximity quickly dispels that notion. Manglers and colossal squigs are barely contained wrecking balls of mayhem and destruction. Moisturized, unbothered, happy, in their lane, flourishing, their insatiable appetite and dull minds run purely on instinct, and that instinct is to kill. Impossibly large, their fleshy maws are studded with row after row of scimitar-bladed teeth, and in the war host of a Night Goblin shaman or war boss, they can only be goaded in the direction of a target, but never truly controlled. They are the maw that waddles, a name that fits them better than it does Scrag, and in stupidity, in violence, orcs and goblins may sometimes have rivals, but chaining these beasts together ensures the greenskins reign supreme in both ways. Themed armies have always been one of my favorite elements of Warhammer Fantasy. Even within a single faction, there are often many different subgroups and warring elements that represent a particular region or character, and without question, the coolest theme build the Greenskins have now revolves around Night Goblins and their Squigs, a symbiotic relationship sure to breed mayhem and catastrophe the world over, especially in the Underway. So today, as we cackle maniacally at these unhinged lunatics and their ridiculous animations, press F in the chat for the Dwarfs and Skaven, because these units are going to be a nightmare to deal with for infantry-based factions that like to hang out in caves underground. Manglers in particular may very well be the best unit added to the Greenskins roster in Omens of Destruction, and perhaps in that top echelon for all three races coming in this update. And yeah, I'd say they're about as fun as they look. Probably some of the more unhinged designs we've seen in an already wacky trilogy of games. So, like I said, getting thematic here in the Underway in the Mushroom Caves of the World's Edge Mountains, and come what may, you can be damn sure the Night Goblins will be feeding their majestic beasts some heaping mounds of ratmen when all is said and done. Now, these colossal squigs are Hannah Montana, Miley Cyrus looking asses. They came in like a wrecking ball. They never hit so hard in love. All they ever did was wreck me. The acid burp, a regiment of renown, can leave vomit piles on the ground, damaging infantry as it bounces through their ranks with huge speed and mass. And if and when they are killed, they explode into piles of that same corrosive acid, severely burning any unit, friend or foe, who walks through. 20 bonus for infantry, hefty dose of AP, collision attacks, good animations. They can be very difficult to shut down and will take most foot troops to Pound Town. But they can rampage. It means they need to be tethered by lords and heroes with some semblance of control over them. It's where the war boss and big boss come in. Now, the Night Goblin war boss has leadership buffs, Tormentor Sword, Spite of the Bad Moon to infuse his squigs with combat steroids, Fermented Fungi to rampage enemies out of position and debuff their melee defense, and his Spinning Loons will clear the way should he get pinned down and surrounded. And just like his big boss counterpart mounted on a great cave squig, the big boss is new to the party with another variant of shrooms that stops rampage and a squig herd summon, which as you might imagine could be incredibly good for shutting down range play or artillery, particularly against Skaven or dwarfs. Definitely his best ability, and he has a healing potion as well, but he's not particularly impressive in melee. The rest of the army, as the title might imply, Theme 2 of course, Night Goblos and regular Goblos from front to back, with the famous Manglers supporting the front ranks. The old ball and chain. Devastating against infantry, they are unbreakable and will not rout ever. Instead, when they're killed, they explode like grenades into puddles of acid, so even when you manage to bring them down, they will hurt you heavily. In fact, may do so more from those explosions than they do in melee combat, where they're already quite good. Some of the craziest animation work in the entire trilogy. I think you guys will fall in love with them very soon. Whatever cuteness, whatever flash of hilarity you may notice will not last long once they reach your lines. Out on the flanks, Circuit Squigs and some regular Squig Hoppers. Those will also be useful for harrying that back line. With the Manglers, they are expensive at around 1100 gold. But the synergy with the Goblin build is perfect, right? You have all this cheap chaff to screen and run interference for them. Now, the Clan Rictus army is also getting thematic, led by a chieftain on a Bonebreaker and Tretch Craventail, Grand Coward of the Deep Wardens. This clan is known for its abnormally huge numbers of Black Furs, Gigantor hulking Stormvermin with sword, shield, and halberd, infantry-focused build with the absolutely terrifying avalanche mortars in the center of everything. A unit that is quite literally perfect against infantry rush builds. They're gonna hurt. a lot. Can basically one-shot Goblin units with a single volley, and that's when they aren't blobbed up. If they aren't shut down quickly, they could end this battle as a contest very early on. Thankfully, they cannot snipe Squigs, so that Death Ball is going to be a problem for the Skaven, because it's also very good against infantry rush builds, which the Skaven have. So expect the purple rain. I think the Gobos will be going insane under that just absolutely disgusting deluge, their formations torn asunder by Poison Glow Mortar Fire. And like monstrous infantry, Squigs perform best when shielded and protected by infantry. So while the Goblins aren't important in and of themselves, they're all quite cheap outside of the 8-peak loonies. If there's no infantry left, there's no cushion for the pushing, and that will make the Manglers and Colossal Squigs easy pickings for Stormvermin Halberds. The way they want to operate is in this Death Bowl. Manglers and Colossal Squigs together, alongside the Lords and Heroes that can tether them and prevent them from rampaging. Really going to make sure that whatever infantry is charged, whether it be Stormvermin, whether it be hordes of Clan Rats, they won't survive very long, at least when they're isolated. Clan Rictus has to present a united front. They have to get Tretch, they have to get the Chieftain, they have to get multiple Halberd units in and on top of the Squigs to shut them down and prevent that mobility, because that crushing mass really makes it difficult to pin them down in place, especially when you don't have a lot of monstrous infantry in your build. No Rat Ogres here, just the Chieftain. So already, Avalanche Mortars up to 300 kills, and the Mangler Squigs and Colossal Squigs working in tandem, pushing through. They want to get into the center, the heart of that Skaven build, and kill off those Avalanche Mortars. If that artillery crew dies relatively early on in the battle, and there's some semblance of Gobbo infantry remaining, then the Night Goblins should be in good shape. But they have to get through the shield wall of elite Clan Rictus Stormvermin. Watch this Gobbo unit just explode, dude. That is what I'm talking about with the Deathglow Mortars. They are just so nasty against infantry. It doesn't matter whether it's armored or whether they're tightly packed formations of light troops. They will just straight up disintegrate when they turn their attention towards a group of infantry. Their formations just gone after a volley or two. Da Acid Burpa making a potentially sacrificial play in response, cutting through to the center of the Skaven battle lines, pinning down the mortars and chunking them to half HP on the charge. May not be able to stick around with Halberds closing in from all sides. The Big Boss and Night Goblin War Boss alongside the Manglers, focusing their leadership and combat buffs in the center, attempting to break through and link up with that Colossal Squig Wrecking Ball in the rear, who's now pulling the Chieftain away from the main force and into a potentially climactic duel in the back. Meanwhile, Dirkit Squigs and the rest of the cavalry have wheeled out to the flanks and rear, and they'll have a few choices on where to engage. But the Colossal Squig on the right flank, torn down by Halberds and Tretch Craventail, is actually pretty decent into large targets, especially those with low melee defense. It's wavering right now and may need some help from the Goblin Big Boss to get it tethered and back into the fight. Avalanche Mortars have been protected. Skaven have a nice box around it. May be hard to shut that thing down. And here comes Dirkit Squig. So this is an important play right here. Chieftain went after the Acid Burpa, which is a single entity that's actually not great in duels against other monsters. It is an anti-infantry specialist with 20 bonus versus infantry and not great melee defense, so a Bone Crusher could certainly put the whooping on him in a single entity duel, but now Dirkit Squigs have a full surround off, and that might be enough to swing it in their favor. Colossal Squig getting some close-ups of this, and in amongst the Halberds. Not a fight it really wants to take. It doesn't have a lot of infantry to help cushion it. It's why it broke and routed off, but it should return. It'll just be hurting real bad. Goblins have been reinvigorated by the War Boss charge in the center. Get back here, plus 16 leadership, helping keep some of them in the fight. And now they're diving into the rear. Mangler Squigs into the Clan Rats and Stormvermin, causing all kinds of mayhem, destruction, and carnage. Now rampaging. They don't even care right now if they get tethered or put under control because they're in the fight they want to be. And in fact, if they die there, will probably cause more carnage than they would in melee anyway. They'll explode with the force of a grenade and cause serious problems for anything that blobs up around them. And speaking of problems, this is why the Goblin Big Boss, new in the Omens of Destruction DLC, is a really nice and thematic addition to a Squig army. They can summon Squig Herd, who are now in the rear. They were summoned on top of the Avalanche Mortars, and that will be the death of the Death Globes. Really important play there. No more shooting for the Skaven. That'll leave the infantry isolated, and although they're in huge numbers and have lots of elites, the Black Furs and those numbers will be lowered substantially and covered in green goo when the Manglers are done exploding all over them. Take a look at this. As they die, Squigs leave one last special present for their Thagaraki enemies. Watch those HP bars get absolutely chunked. It's a big reason why the Manglers are so devastating, because you can kind of fire and forget them. You don't necessarily care if they rampage, especially when they're surrounded and in and amongst a bunch of infantry. Colossal Squigs have a similar mechanic. They also blow up when they die, but they are unbreakable. They can rout. So oftentimes, they won't die in the middle of a horde. They'll die at the edge of the map or not die at all, and you won't get the benefit of their explosive mechanic. Meanwhile, Manglers can't break. So they'll fight to the end, and if you blob to kill them, sure, you'll probably get them, but they'll punish that heavily. Big time debuffs on Tretch Craventail, hitting him with that fermented fungi, rampaging Tretch, lowering his melee defense by 24. And the Chieftain in the back has been cleared off by Durkat Squigs and Da Acid Burpa. Another big duel win there. So Night Goblins are taking control of the battle. They don't have a big lead here in terms of balance of power. A lot of infantry remaining to cut through. Manglers, oh my lord, look at that, dude. Such a difficult unit to deal with, and if you rewind it back, take that, rewind it back. Sure got the flow to make that booty go. Sorry, I had to do it. You'll see that the Skaven, their HP bar just plummeted when those things explode. I mean, I think I saw the Clan Rats lose almost a third of their health, maybe almost half their HP from a single Mangler Squig explosion. It's a really difficult unit to handle, because you're stuck in a rock and a hard place, right? Like, do you let them just kill your infantry normally, or do you let them kill it with explosions? When you finally get a good engagement, do you surround them? Seems like the answer is probably not. So Da Acid Burpa and Colossal Squig, the twin colossal beastly monsters, have linked up once again. They're into the Stormvermin, getting cycle charged by Squig Hoppers now. And it's time for the Squiggy boys to feast. So much infantry for them to cycle charge and kill, but a lot of high melee defense and a plenty of halberds remaining too. Tretch Craventail is alive in the center of his army, wavering and on low health, but he will be able to link up. Wah has activated as those isolated Stormvermin are completely inundated by a swarm of Squigs. The Wah kicking in, and melee attack, charge bonus values, all of that skyrocketing, and they're gonna run through those isolated Stormvermin, kill them off. And now we're gonna get one of my favorite things, and I've talked about this many times before. I absolutely love battles where both forces kind of reconsolidate everything and go back in again. There's not a whole lot left from the Night Goblin army, but their most important units are still alive outside the Mangler Squigs, who more than did their job. Skaven way outnumber what remains of the Night Goblin army, but there are a couple sneaky boys operating out on the flank and rear who could provide some more of that meat shielding and cushion for the single entities when they look to engage in this final fight. Whatever's out on the periphery will not last very long. The terror will kick in, Colossal Squig will rip them apart and feast upon their flesh, and now the shield wall will be formed around Tretch Craventail, while the Tormentor Sword will actually pin down these Stormvermin, prevent them from routing, so the Colossal Squig and Da Acid Burpa can rip and tear until they're done. Stormvermin don't really want this unit coming back in the late stages of the battle, especially from behind. A rear charge could be the difference in winning or losing. Again, Night Goblins are in command here, but it is not completely in the bag yet. They've got a lot of infantry to cut through, and they still have to strike that killing blow on Tretch. Night Goblins have no reason to give Stormvermin with shields a 1v1 fight. They'll wait until the main line has engaged and then charge in from the rear. And here we go. Round 2. Fight. Durkat Squigs charging up the center directly into the Clan Rats. Their bonus versus infantry will help tremendously off the charge. May not want to stick in melee, and indeed, we will see some cycle charging from them here, while the Colossal Squigs attempt to overload the Skaven right flank and try to stay out of the grasp of those halberds, but they've rampaged, and actually, Special Shrooms was activated with the Colossal Squig outside of the AoE, and that means it will not stop rampaging now in and amongst a horde of halberds, which could really hurt. If the Skaven are able to kill a Colossal Squig here, that would heavily shift the balance of power, and maybe get them back into this game, but it's double Colossal Squig and its Durkat Squig cycle charging, while the fermented fungi lowers the Stormvermin Halberd's melee defense and rampages them. A nice answer to a particularly scary engagement for that Colossal Squig, and honestly at this point, we're all hoping that it just explodes in the middle of the enemy army and kills everything that remains. It's about to die, but the Skaven leadership cannot hold any longer. Tretch Craventail runs like the coward he is. His Clan Rictus Stormvermin will follow shortly behind, and that is going to be your battle. Super thematic and fun game between the Night Goblins of the Moonhowlers tribe and Okoi's Clan Rictus Stormvermin. Sub-factions within a faction are literally some of my favorite elements of this entire trilogy. I'm not a big Night Goblins player, but I will say now with these extra units, the Mangler Squigs and the Colossal Squigs, it just feels way more thematic, way more fun to use. I am not the biggest greenskins guy in the world, but some of these units here anyway, Manglers in particular, they added a completely new dynamic to the roster, to that sub-faction within a faction, and it makes them a joy to play, honestly. The Squig theme builds do have some very clear weaknesses, but Manglers in particular, I think are going to just destroy a lot of factions in this game. I had one game against Okoi where his Manglers just ran through my elite Khornate infantry in like 2 minutes flat, and my entire front line was breaking. I was like, what the hell is going on? It's the Manglers, dude. They are a serious issue for a lot of factions. Colossal Squigs are great too. Did really well this game. Avalanche Mortars were such a problem for my infantry. The Big Boss was actually a joke this game in terms of damage value. Only 180 value after fighting Tretch. I don't think he landed an attack on him. But what he did do that was really important was summon those Squig Herd in the back line, tie up those Avalanche Mortars, and open it up for the rest of the Manglers and Colossal Squigs to do their job.